broader implications to the citizens of Sri Lanka. Now, to formally commence the proceedings, I would like to invite the President of the Economic Students Association, Viniti Abdullah, to deliver the welcome address.
Policy tool that shapes the country's economic direction, influencing businesses, households, and national development. As we navigate economic challenges and opportunities, understanding its implications is more important than ever. Ladies and gentlemen, a very good evening to all of you. It is my pleasure to welcome all of you to the annual budget discussion organized by the Economic Students Association. Under the microscope, the 2025 budget in focus. First and foremost, it is my privilege to extend a warm welcome to Professor Chandra Alukhe, Head of the Department of Economics. His unwavering guidance and leadership continue to provide invaluable support to initiatives such as this, fostering meaningful dialogue on critical economic matters. We are also deeply honored to be joined by a distinguished panel of experts, each of whom brings a wealth of knowledge and expertise to today's discussion. Professor Priyanka Dosona, Professor in Economics, Head of the Department of Information Technology, University of Colombo, Mr. Sanjay Arivansa, Head of the Economics Intelligence Unit at the Chamber of Commerce, Dr. Amari Vedaveda, Senior Researcher at Bandaranaike Center for International Studies, and Ms. Sarah Partner and Head of Tax Services, Video Sri Lanka. In addition, I would like to extend a sincere welcome to our esteemed faculty members, invited guests, students, members of the media, and all those present here today. Your participation underscores the significance of this discussion and reflects shared commitment to critically engaging with Sri Lanka's. We anticipate an insightful and thought-provoking exchange of ideas this evening. Thank you very much, and let us commence the proceedings. Thank you, Viniti.
Now it is my pleasure to introduce Professor Chandra Alukhe, Head of the Department of Economics, Faculty of Arts, University of Colombo, who will provide a brief introduction to today's event.
Thank you for the introduction, otherwise nobody know me. Anyway, good evening. Thank you very much for your presence. Participating in this timely and very exciting day of the latest budget. Under the microscope, so we are expected to see many things that has not been seen by others and previously because it is under the microscope today. So thank you once again to our distinguished panelists, Ms. Sarah Akhar, so spending your valuable time to enlighten especially our students and the other participants, and Sanjay Arivansa, one of who has graduated from Colombo University, Department of Economics, and Dr. Amari Vedaveda, thank you once again for devoting time, and our dear Professor Yunus. Thank you for all of you, and it reminds me when we were students long time ago. I'm not very old, it was long time ago, but I'm very young. So actually our teachers were organizing all these type of things, and we were probably serving the sweeping the classrooms, doing a lot of manual labor work as students. But now, how the things have changed. Our student community is taking the lead. What we have to do is come and welcome everyone now as teachers. things have grown and we are very comfortable for that. So I'm very pleased to see that all these things are managed by our undergraduate candidates. So very soon they will be like our senior colleague Sanjay, maybe helping us to see the economic aspects thoroughly at a later stage. And even I heard the motivation is done by one of our undergraduate candidates, Ms. Shihab. So wonderful. Normally these things are done by senior colleagues, but now things have changed. I think that's great. So they will take the lead very soon. So they now this Minister of Department of Economics and the Student Association, Economic Students Association now has become one of the important bringing sources of the economists to see the world differently. So having said that, let us start today's proceedings. Good. Both sit at the same time, very good. Thank you very much, Nesh, coming here with all these physical difficulties. So we appreciate it very much. So you could also contribute intellectually to the discussion. And please, we have expertise from outside, in-house, so they take the maximum advantage after they give their view about the new budget. Please share your thoughts. That is one of the best ways to learn, because in classrooms you may be studying fiscal policy, monetary policy, all these theoretical stuff. Now you have good opportunity for you to see how these things are working in real world. And then if you have any doubts, please express your views, and we have somebody from who were part of the Monetary Consulting Committee and Chamber of Commerce and BDO, and International Center. So it's politics, international relations, economics. So good opportunity and expanded expertise. So take the maximum opportunity. So let's start. Begin the proceeding. Thank you very much.
Questions to the panel. So without further ado, let me officially introduce our esteemed speakers for today. First, we are pleased to welcome Ms. Sarah Akhtar, Partner and Head of Tax Services at BDO Partners. Ms. Akhtar will share her expertise on tax reforms and revenue policies in the 2025 budget. Next, we have Mr. Sanjay Aryavansa, Senior Economist and Head of the Economic Intelligence Unit at the Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. Mr. Aryavansa will discuss private sector growth and the business climate under the 2025 budget. Joining us is also Dr. Amali Vedagadra, Senior Researcher at the Lanka Center for International Studies. Dr. Vedagadra will shed light on the IMF's role in the 2025 budget. And finally, we are privileged to have with us Professor Priyanka Singha, Professor of Economics and Head of the Department of Information Technology at the University of Colombo. Professor Singha will speak about the macroeconomic outlook in the 2025 budget. I'd like to now invite our panelists and moderator to join us on stage.
So I'm very disappointed to see Zana and Sarah after. Just to give a brief introduction to what she does. Sarah is a partner and head of tax services at BDO Partners. She has extensive experience in the field of taxation, including direct and indirect tax compliance, tax advisory, revenue authority assistance, and handling tax appeals, tax planning and structuring investments, mergers and acquisitions, due diligences, research and development, transfer pricing, trade and customs taxes. Prior to joining BDO, she served at KPMG Sri Lanka. She's also served as knowledge manager for various local and international networks of the firm and has attended regional trainings on taxation in Asia Pacific, Middle East, South Asia, and Europe. Sarah is also a fellow member of Institute of Chartered Accountants Sri Lanka, Chartered Institute of Management Accountants UK, member of the Chartered Institute of Securities and Investments UK, and a Chartered Global Management Accountant. Sarah served as a member of the CSO Tax Faculty, CSO Tax Committee since 2018, and the CSO Transfer Pricing Task Force in 2017. She currently serves as chairperson of CSO Faculty of Taxation. In addition to a specialism in the field of taxation, she obtained Islamic Finance qualification from the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investments UK. She has been involved in various Islamic finance initiatives and was part of the team that made representations to the local regulatory authorities to create a level playing field for Islamic finance instruments over its conventional counterparts. This effort led to the amendment of its tax statutes, and she also won the Rising Islamic Finance Personality of the Year Silver Award at the Islamic Finance Forum of South Asia in 2016. Sarah entered the United Nations Development Programme and has been part of a number of projects of the UNDP. She participated at the World Bank IAB Survey 2009 as a local partner for Sri Lanka. Sarah is also a lecturer, writer, and has authored various thought leadership articles to local and international journals. So with that extremely multitude of profile, it's an honor to have Sarah with us. So over to you, Sarah.
That extremely long. So when I said my profile, I just something from it, but I guess that was reinforcement for myself first of all that I've been doing over there. So good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Special thank you to Professor. We've seen each other in person for a live session after some time. And Umesh and Gunji, everyone from ESK for having me back as well. In the interest of time, I will dive into my slides. I've been given 10 minutes to talk about the tax reforms that came in the 79 national budget. But before we go to the future, I want to quickly take you through all the tax revenue that has been collected by the Department of Inland Revenue over the past couple of years. So 2019, I start off with that because that is actually years ago for me, was when Sri Lanka reached 1 trillion in tax revenue. And in 2019, at the end of 2019, we had plenty of tax cuts, which then translated to halving the government revenue to 500 billion in 2020. And thereafter, there were many measures that were brought in, many policy measures that were introduced, and since then, and there were amnesties that were granted as well, which resulted in, as of 2023, the reported number, according to the Inland Revenue Performance Report, which is the last published performance report, of 1.8 trillion. And if you all remember, when we recently, sometime in January, there was a media release by the Commission of Inland Revenue saying Sri Lanka recorded a staggering 1.9 trillion, which was the highest tax revenue that was earned by or collected by the Inland Revenue in 2024 for the calendar year. So that is basically the efforts of everyone in terms of policy, in terms of the payers, administration, and this encompasses not just basically some of it also includes a certain element of the taxes that are collected at point of customs for VAT. So you see what results can be brought about. I think I will skip this slide because I have very eminent economics who will talk about the budget estimates for the GDP. But for tax itself, the revenue estimate, the budget estimates the tax revenue to GDP to go up to 13.9% for the next year. And to retain, of course, a primary surplus, primary budget surplus of 2.3. So this is a quick graph as to how the revenue is going to come. Especially on the revenue side, you can see that there is a significant focus on taxation as a means of collecting revenue to the state. So how is this tax going to come about? We have a whole new tax table for every one of us who is in this room. Because currently, all of us as of today enjoy tax-free allowance of 1.2 million per annum, and that's going to go up to 1.8 million per annum, which means monthly basically you can earn 150,000 without tax. And currently there are tax slabs of 500,000 all the way up to 30%, and the balance is taxed at 36%. But into the future, from the 1st of April, what we call a year of assessment, which is 25-26 onwards, the personal relief will go up to 1.8. Thereafter, there will be a 1 million slab, which will be at 6%, and effectively, the middle income earners will have a huge relief compared to what they pay at the moment. And thereafter, there is no 12% rate, but there is a 15%, I will come to that very shortly, for certain providers of services. But by and large, the vast universe of us will enjoy up to 30% at 4.3 million, and thereafter, only the 36% will apply. So on 15%, who is going to be larger than 15? I know that it says corporate income tax on top. That's the funny part about being a tax consultant in Sri Lanka, because Dinky wanted me to send the slide on Monday morning, and I prepared this. I don't know if you check the time that you got it. Would have been midnight of Saturday, right? On Sunday morning, the bills were published. And in the bills, they said not only corporate, the individual will be subject to this 15%. So let's read it as income tax and not corporate. So currently, there is an exemption that is granted if you are doing service exports. What the law means by service exports is if I sit here in Sri Lanka and I do consultancy to someone in some part of the world, and they use my service in that part of the world, then as long as I bring in the foreign currency into the country, I don't pay taxation. And that was basically by and large the status quo in the previous law, and it is the status quo in this law. For a very brief period between 2018 and 2019, there was the exemption was removed, but it was brought back in because of the foreign currency inflow that it used to bring in. From the 1st of April 2025, that particular that particular description, as well as any other foreign source income, will be liable at 15%. So if you have a company, it's flat 15, but if you have an individual, then you can pass through this table from 0 to 6, and then you don't go to 18, you can stop at 15. So the maximum rate for the individual will be 15%. Capital gains are currently imposed if you have investment assets in Sri Lanka, and those investment assets will basically be subject to capital gains from, which is currently at 10% for individuals to 15%, and for anyone other than individuals and partnerships who are not companies, currently whoever is enjoying any other rate will go to 30% in line with the corporate capital gains rate. So there is an increase in terms of export of service, increase in terms of capital gain, but a reduction in personal taxes. A few other proposals that were pronounced was for senior citizens There is currently, actually let me come to the third point and then go to the first point. So there is currently a withholding tax. If you have a savings account in Sri Lanka, you go to their bank statement, there will be a line that says advanced income tax. And that is 5% of the interest that you earn on that particular saving or the FD. So that 5% will go up to 10% from first April. And what does that mean? You will have less cash, right? From the 95 goes down to 90. But if you are able to go to the Indian government and tell them, I shouldn't be subject to this rate, because we need to see how that mechanics works, then that dedicated unit will clarify and ensure that exemptions are given where applicable. That said, coming to the second point, it says if, let's say, I don't have income of 1.8 million for the year, okay, but the bank is supposed to deduct from 0 onwards any interest that I earn. There is going to be an upfront deduction of 10%. So that is severely going to hamper my liquidity. But what the law says, or rather what the budget says is that liquidity issue will be resolved because they will give refunds at record time, and as long as there is somebody who was not supposed to pay tax but who suffered this withholding tax at source, you can basically request a refund for which you need to basically file a return. Now that said, what about senior citizens? Senior citizens also currently pay the withholding tax on interest income, but into the future, if there is a senior citizen who is within the tax-free threshold of 1.8 million for a year, they can go to the bank and give a direction to the bank saying, I am not eligible for this deduction, and therefore the bank will not deduct up to according to your direction. And there is another very welcome move where senior citizens last year we experienced was the first year where everyone had to file a return online through the RANEX, but senior citizens had encountered some difficulties and manual returns were permitted on a case-by-case basis. But from this filing onwards, senior citizens can file manual returns. So those are some of the changes on the personal income tax. On tax compliance, there is something called a statement of estimated tax that we file very early in the year on the 15th of August, saying this is going to be my income for the whole year, and divide by 4 quarters, paying 4 quarters. Now that system is going to go away. Instead of estimating, what the law will do, or what you're supposed to do, is take your last year's taxable income and pay in 4 quarters. This is what we did under the old law as well. Couple of changes to residence rules for people who hold Golden Paradise visa and seafarers as to when at which point they become residents. On tax administration, it looks like a bit of an amnesty, to be honest. The Commissioner General is authorized to waive interest on any income tax liability arising for 2022-23, that is the tax year ending March 23, or any previous year of assessment, given that you pay the full amount within 6 months of the passing of this new law once the budget is approved. Other than that, there were a lot of digitization moves. So for tax and revenue digitization, there will be full digitization of tax systems and minimum human interaction to increase transparency. On VAT, again my colleague Sanjay will dive deeper into this. The SWAP system, or what we call a simplified VAT system, will be basically removed, and this has actually been brought into the Gazette as well. And what will happen in terms of SWAP, I'll let Sanjay explain, but by and large, if you are currently in SWAP, what shall I say, an RIP, you will, into the future, have to pay the money to the suppliers and request cash refunds from the Inland Revenue, and they will basically have to give you the refund based on this thing called the waste refund system, which is something proposed by the IMF in the country reports bill, where they look at the bona fide of transactions and then release the reports based on the past history. Lanka digital services is also brought into the budget as well as the where they say that if you provide services on digital platforms, for international operators who are providing services to Sri Lankan people, they basically supplying services in Sri Lanka, then they should basically be bought into the VAT chargeability, and what will happen as a result is the 18% will get added to the bill and the consumer will have to pay 18% on the digital services as well. A couple of other changes not so significant. The most important one, I think, from this slide is the lockdown at the point of sale. So currently we don't have this mechanism. It's you're free to maintain that records the way the law says it. But into the future, they will invest in something called the point of sales machine, and everyone, all the transactions will be recorded at the point of sale. So if you're the VAT registered person, the chance of, what should I say, fabricating or sort of keeping something off records will be minimum, or will hopefully be zero into the future when the point of sale machine comes into play. Just a few minutes. Social security levy, there were a couple of exemptions that were introduced. In the interest of time, I won't go too much into detail. The only significant one per se is on petrol, diesel and kerosene. There was a question whether it's liable at only at the filling station or an import. This exemption brings it to the entire supply chain. So that's a good thing. Stamp duty for lease or hire of any property is going to be double from Saturday, basically from the 1st of March. And on the betting and gaming levy act, there are a couple of changes as well. I believe good to go with that. Tax Appeals Commission is an independent commission that is set up to hear tax cases when you can no longer settle in the revenue. A lot of changes have come or proposed or being proposed to the Tax Appeals Commission. On the fees are going to go up from if you want to file a case with the commission from 2,500 to 15,000. If you want to go to the Court of Appeal, then from 1,500 to 10,000. The most, I suppose, significant thing is there is a cash deposit requirement. If I want to file a case at the Tax Appeals Commission, I have to keep 25% of the assessed tax, penalty and interest amount in a special account maintained under the authority of the Commissioner General. So this basically increases people's ability, if you have liquidity issues, to basically go ahead and prepare an appeal. So that is going to be a problem, and then the rest of it to do with procedural aspects. When you file a case at the Tax Appeals Commission, you can only file it if the Inland Revenue Administrative Review has either given you a decision or has disallowed your request. And mediation and settlement between taxpayers and CGIR. You can't bring in new matters that we didn't discuss at Inland Revenue. You can't bring it at Tax Appeals Commission. And you have to, so basically we keep a bank guarantee of 25% with the Commissioner at the Tax Appeals Commission. It says the proposal will be to mandate you then to transfer the money to the Commissioner General. Even if, say, you lost the case and you want to go to the Court of Appeal, still if you lost the case at Tax Appeals, all of the money will get transferred. That is a proposal as well. So these are little things that may increase people's willingness to go for appellate procedures. So with that, and having taken much of your time, I believe, it brings me to the end of my slides, and we hand you back to the moderator. Thank you.
projects on labor markets and firm productivity. Prior to moving to the UK, he was a researcher at the Institute of Policy Studies, Sri Lanka, working on economic policy research, and he initially began his career as a lecturer in mathematics at the University of Colombo, then he earned a BSc in mathematics with first class honors before joining the University of Berkeley as a faculty member. And he later pursued an LSc in economics at the University of Oxford, specializing in development economics. That being said, for his students.
Thank you very much. Thank you to ESA. Thank you so much. And Mesh, thank you very much for inviting. So, in my speech, I'll just set it into 3 topics what I'm going to talk about. So, I represent Ceylon Chamber of Commerce. So, whatever I say is a representation of our members. So, there are 550 background in the Ceylon Chamber. There are about 550 member companies at the Ceylon Chamber. But there are more than 1,000 small and medium enterprises at this country also. So it's not just large companies, it's also small and medium enterprises also. So I try to reflect upon what they say when we meet them, issues that they see, the good things that they see to the budget. The first topic is to set the context of the budget. Second, I'll move on to 2 issues that the private sector talks about. And third, I will talk about some sectors, few sectors, and some accompanying areas for these sectors like energy and investments that the private sector talks about. Now, you have to understand in the budget, when you are designing this budget, if you are the person who is designing this at the finance ministry, you have some restrictions. You have a piece of legislation called the Public Financial Management Act. You have to ensure that your constraint to that Public Financial Management Act, where your primary expenditure is less than 13%, revenue, there's an IMF target for total revenue of 15.1%, tax revenue at 13.9% for this year. So you have to keep these things in mind when you're structuring the budget also. We look at revenue and expenditure. So total revenue is at around 4.9 trillion, which is a 23% increase. Tax revenue target from this budget is about 4.5 trillion. Now where is 4.59? Where is this revenue coming from? 4.59, break it down. Taxes on international trade, about 650 billion. Taxes on domestic goods and services, that is your VAT, excise duties, likewise, 2.74 trillion. Taxes on income and profits, those are your personal income, corporate income, 1.1 trillion. So that's how that 4.59 is consisted of. Then you look at the expenditure side of things. 7.19 trillion. Recurrent expenditure of 5.886. What is recurrent? That is your salaries and wages, your interest costs, your subsidies. So if you look at your recurrent expenditure of 5.8 trillion, how is that broken down? Interest at 2.95 trillion. That's more than 50% of your recurrent expenditure. So that's a huge constraint for the budget. Subsidies and transfers, 1.29 trillion. Salaries and wages, 1.23 trillion. So you understand the context of the budget then. Revenue and expenditure. Now, let me move into some of 2 issues that the private sector talks about. One thing is on this thing called SVAT, Simplified VAT. It's a VAT refund system. How it happens, let me not go into a lot of detail, maybe in the Q&A I can take it up if you are interested. But in short, there's a credit voucher that is issued. This is mainly for the exporters and some of the zero-rated folks. Think about the exporters. So the exporters don't pay upfront VAT. They get a credit voucher. So now there's a condition of the IMF where they tell to the exporters and to the internal also that you have to move away from this SVAT, this credit voucher system, and come up with this risk-based system. The issue for the private sector then is you have to start paying your VAT upfront, and then that refund system will kick in. It's not a risk-based system. What do you mean risk-based? There are some companies which are high risk, some companies which are low risk. So you have to categorize that. So The issue for the private sector is, oh, now we have to start paying. There's a liquidity issue on our working capital. How do we go about this? And they don't trust the system per se, the refund system. That's the whole issue. You facilitate, but the private sector will run with it. So you need some stability in your environment, and the private sector is run with it. But there are some issues on trade. There's something called trade facilitation. You facilitate trade. Because if you take the board agencies, there are a lot of issues at the board agencies. Still, there's a lot of manual documentation that needs to be done. Just imagine so much of manual documentation. I have papers, just like that. Imagine so much of papers need to be submitted, and it's up to the discretion of the board agency person to see whether the document is correct or not. It's based on a person's perspective sometimes. Now that is quite annoying for, if you're a person who wants to export or you're importing to export. It's not easy. Trade facilitation is key. And what are some of the topics talked about? There's something called national single window. It's a platform where you can upload your documents easily. There's a lot of work being done by the World Bank. There's a blueprint for this national single window platform. Not very sure whether it's any. We had a meeting today with the World Bank also in the morning at the chamber. And they are quite interested. The thing is, getting a lot of these institutions onto this platform is key. Then, the national single window, I won't stay on that because that's an important topic talked about within the private sector. We met with the Pakistan single window, the CEO of the Pakistan single window. Like I said, it's a platform where you can upload documents and it's done digitally. Now it's interesting about that person, CEO. He was a customs officer for 21 years at Pakistan Customs. And he joined this Pakistan single window. It is privately run, but it is established through an act of parliament. So the single window, they have an act of parliament as well. Interesting, because I'm assuming they're very focused on ensuring there's trade facilitation. Because when you talk about exports and imports, trade facilitation is a key topic we talk about. Then the president and the government talks about digitalization. And I thought it's important to talk about digitalization, the drive for digitalization. The idea behind it is to minimize corruption, to improve efficiency, productivity, like this. Now you must have heard a lot about the digital ID. That's been talked about. The private sector is supportive of that, the digital ID. And there's something called tourism ID, which Dr. Hans Desure, one of our past chairmen at the chamber, he is the advisor to the president. What is this tourism ID? It's just to see, it's an ID for tourists coming in, planning to track these visitors' spending patterns. Now we talk about number of tourists coming in, maybe 2 million, 3 million, whatever. But the number of tourists earning, we talk about tourism earnings, say 3 billion, and it needs to go up to 5 billion. How do you exactly calculate that number? The way it's done is, from what I know, is there's a survey that they do at the airport, and they ask some of the tourists about their expenditure patterns, and they extrapolate numbers. Now, I have not met a single one of my friends or anyone who's come from abroad who has gone through that survey. So it can be undervaluation or overvaluation of your tourism earnings. So it's very important to understand tourist spending patterns. And then when you talk about tourism spending patterns, another thing that the private sector talks about is, do you want high spending tourists or do you want to be little dash guys? Because ideally it's great to have high spending tourists, folks who can spend $300, $400 per day. Right now, on average, we have tourists who spend about $150, $160. You have your backpackers who go and stay at Airbnbs, who use subsidized transportation like our railways. That doesn't generate a lot of income. But of course, tourism sector is key. And digitalization plays a key role for tourism. And I have another section on tourism, but I will not go into that. And the government also talks about digital payments. Digitalization is great. I see digitalization as a huge opportunity. But on the other hand, you also have to remember cybersecurity. Now we can talk about digitalization, that's amazing, but some of the government agencies still use email. They don't have their own email accounts from government email accounts. They don't use it. It can be, cybersecurity threats is a key topic that needs to be looked into because your accounts can be easily hacked. And from a government perspective, imagine that revenue authorities are hacked, your personal information. Now we talk about a digital ID, that's great. If it's hacked, just imagine what happened in India. It's I think about 800 million odd accounts were leaked to the dark web. So there are issues. But those issues should not constrain the government saying we should not do it. We have to go with the times, improve, consistently improve. So digitalization, that's what I want to mention on digitalization. And then, finally, on the energy sector. Energy is a key sector. Now, from what we see is that this budget has bold reforms. That's what the Second Chamber, how the Second Chamber looks at it. There is continuity from the previous government's budget to this government. That's also good from an investor perspective because there is continuity. There are no sudden shocks to the system. But on the energy sector, there are some issues. Especially there's something called the Electricity Act, and they want to break it up to generation, transmission, distribution, likewise. But they are looking at restricting open access. These are some discussions going on, and also they are looking at bringing down renewable energy development from 10 megawatts to 1 megawatt, qualified for this thing called standard power purchase. Now, when you want to bring down renewable energy development from 10 megawatts to 1 megawatt, where the renewable energy developers from the private sector have already developed projects for more than 1 megawatt, 7, 10, 15, likewise, you create uncertainty in the market and you are getting mixed signals. Now, that is not good. And there needs to be a clear communication of what's happening. Existing standard power purchase agreements that were signed between current renewable energy developers and the government, what will happen to those agreements? So there are questions being asked, and the energy sector is a key sector to be discussed, and that's something the private sector is always talking about because it impacts all of our lives and the corporates as well. So that's what I want to discuss. Maybe we can go into detail in the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for that elaborate explanation about the business sector. I'm sure you have more questions as the panel goes about. We'll move on to the political economic side of things. So that third panelist for the evening is Dr. Amali Devagaduru. Dr. Amali Devagaduru is a feminist political economist. She has a PhD in political science from the University of Hawaii, Manoa, USA. Her primary training is economics at the University of Kerala. She has a master's degree in international politics from the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. Her research interests are the political economy of finance, gender and development, and third world politics. And she works at the Banana Center for International Studies at the CMU. So, if you have any more time, we'll be done.
Thank you. Thank you, Professor Aditi and Ganesh, for asking me to come and speak about the budget. It's an interesting time because I was personally looking forward to the budget. And I was asked to speak about how the IMF has been framing the budget, and I would like to take cue from an article I wrote towards the end of January on about this. I said it was published in May 20, and I said that the likely outcomes of the budget. I argue that budget demonstrates the drudgery of making ends meet inside a debtor's prison. So I would like to discuss how and what I mean by a debtor's prison and how the IMF has come to transform the Sri Lankan economy and constrain the subsequent governments in a way that where the state or the sovereign agency cannot be exercised in terms of development. I think in this budget there might be some kind of consensus that the budget departs from the usual trends that we have seen in the past. There were the burden of adjustment, right? Like we say that the budget, we have heard about the bitter pills, tightening of belts, austerity, right? So where this burden of austerity has not been placed on the working people, farmers, women, or other, the people who are mostly in Sri Lanka. I think we have our economy is, if you look at it, it's a class society, right? We nobody can talk about when we say what the budget is and the class. But how people who make a living from their either wage labor or through various livelihoods in agriculture, fisheries, or in the SME sector. So as I said, this budget is making a departure from the usual trend. But still, this budget does not really show us that it is capable. The budget, I think both Sarah and Sanjay talk about it, what the budget is. That budget is a set of, it's not only the monetary allocations in terms of financial allocation that the state makes, it's also a set of principles, right? That the economy will move in the coming year. When I say the economy, it's the sectors that I spoke about, the people who are not really represented in these conversations. I think that we have had multiple discussions on the budget, but there have been, I think, no discussion with the farmers, right? Or the working people in the FTC, or the women who create the biggest value in the Australian economy, but still underrepresented in the labor force. So these are the underrepresented sectors. And then there is the private sector that the Chamber of Commerce represents. Then there are various other cartels or lobby groups. Why do we call that the budget is within the constraint and it represents the debtor's prison? So I would like to point out 3 reasons for my argument. One of them, I think Sanjay already mentioned, how the emphasis on the primary surplus, that it has to be in 2.3, that the budget deficit should reduce, right? And how the particular acts, like the Public Debt Management Act, how these things constrain the government's capability to invest, right? These investments might be either be on the social security, right, or on the sectors like agriculture, fishers, right, or the SMEs, and especially the government areas. Because I think I disagree with Sanjay when he said that the government is like a parent. I will come to that. That this is the idea that we have been socialized into. But if you look at the world, the governments are not only parents, or the line watchman, or the invisible hand. There are other roles the governments play. If you look at, say, like India, our most closest neighbor, who went through a balance of payment crisis in early 90s and had the IMF engagement, but has, I think, passed that track. Whereas Sri Lanka, we have since the independence, if you look at the economic, the documents, So that's one aspect of how the IMF engagement has limited the state's capability to play other roles than parent. Then, if you look at what the IMF does, I said that IMF talks about the macroeconomic stability. To do that, they advise us to be austere, be frugal, right? If you remember the last year's budget, there was a Buddhist way of living, right? The Theravada economics was brought in to justify, to explain to people, ordinary people, how to be frugal, how to be austere. And IMF has been saying this to us from 1978. They've been advising us, okay, you are spending too much, you according to your needs. And what this has done is to, I don't know whether Sanjay will agree or not, it has not only disempowered the state, because the Sri Lankan state, if you look at from 48, after we got the independence, the Sri Lankan state has been trying to play, because there was no real private sector. Right? 1948, we did not have the private sector to be the engine of growth. So the state had to take the lead. So that's how the SOEs, the state-owned enterprises, came to be. And that's why the Sri Lanka government, we have so much of investments on social welfare, because the population was so poor. And you cannot run a capitalist economy with downtrodden people who are sick and who are uneducated. Right? So those explains why the government had to invest in healthcare and education and social security. And what the austerity has done is not only to disempower the state to play these roles, it has also disempowered the private sector. Because the austerity shrinks the economy. It doesn't really grow. It doesn't stimulate the economy. It shrinks. Right? Various policies that could be the central bank or the treasury implements, maybe like the government, right? First is the limiting expenditure. Then other will be inflation control. Like the central bank's only obsession is controlling inflation. They don't seem to be doing anything else. And though they are also responsible to manage public debt. But so, in simple terms, what the austerity does is to shrink the economy, which also affects the private sector. It also affects the private sector, and I say the private sector, the employers, right? And because their market activities don't expand, and it affects the wage laborers. Their wages decline. So what happens when your wages decline and the social security declines, quality of life declines, and when you think about what about the government revenue? So where are you going to tax from? Whom are you going to take taxes from if the economy is not really growing in real sense? Right? So your revenue also declines. So if you reflect, in 1978, Sri Lanka's government's revenue was at 28%. Right? In 2023, we are at 11%. So how did this happen? So there's real reason. Of course, there's taxation. the exporters and importers have been through over invoicing or misinvoicing, hoarding the rightful wealth of the people in some offshore accounts, right? So, and I think that's another issue that without, we discuss about the taxes. It's very important for a developing country like ours. Unless you borrow, how are you going to generate government revenue? Because then taxes are very important, right? But where are you going to tax if your economy is not developing in the real terms? Then I would like to come to the third point of our encampment. Since we are having this discussion at the Department of Economics, at a public university, I think it's, and public university funded through public tax money, I think we should look at what has happened to the discipline of economics. So when I say discipline of economics, teaching economics, research, and production of knowledge. What kind of knowledge do we produce? So if you look at since 40s, we didn't really have, those who it had, I think, a lot of Indian economists teaching in Sri Lankan universities. And then the first generation, second generation of economics, you will see, and if you look at compare today, I'm not offending the economists in this room, but if you compare them, you will see the qualitative difference. So I think when I was introduced, they introduced me as a political economist. Then when you look at the first and second generation, you will see these are, very reputed, very prominent economists, right? Like Dr. Gamli Korea, right? They are internationally acclaimed, but they are political economists. They are trained in neoclassical economics, and still they identify themselves as political economics. This species of economics have been in the decline. Today, our discipline, I am also trained in economics from Lanka. We are not into very narrow, neoclassical, neoliberal economics. We have completely eliminated the plurality in our discipline. By the plurality, I mean you don't have to be like a socialist or a Marxist. There are other ways, neoclassical economics to begin with, right? Then there are Keynesian economics, there's feminist economics, then there's regenerative, the various inversions that have been coming up. Regenerative economics, or donut economics, we have heard, right? And because of our narrowing in our thinking, that to believe that the market is the real engine of growth, that the government is the parent, then I don't there's no other role for the government to play. We are simply believing and we are thinking that there's no real alternative but the market, right? And if the IMF doesn't really come and rescue us, we are like lost. Right? And we are so afraid that what will happen, we don't want to think about beyond what the IMF or the World Bank or the other financial agencies tells us. Then if you are interested in political economy, you will also see that IMF is not simply a financial, multilateral financial agency. Right? There is the international financial architecture, which I was discussing this with information pointed out. Right? And there is a lot of political economy behind it. Finance is weapon of control. And the financial architecture is the system of control, right? And it's a way of maintaining hegemony of the global countries, like the United States. And you will see that, the Trump, I think this is the best time to discuss it today because we see what's happening in the US. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, is hitting this free market what you call it, the way of doing things, right? Free trade. But can we do it? He's saying, okay, we are not going to go. He did that in his first term, and he is doing it again, right? But we are forced to subscribe and subscribe to the WTO principles. But the US, who is the maker of this international finance, the global economy, since the Second World War, we are having this budget after the default, right? And after the article error, and which I would like to argue that the MPP government's victory is depicted as the outcome of article error, of people's demand for real change. So whether the budget is doing what people want, that are they really bringing a change into the economic system? They have tried to do some things, as I said, and in terms of financial constraints, they tried to set up some industrial zones, uplift the downtrodden masses, the social security spending, wages, and other in terms of agriculture, and they are also trying to stimulate the productive economy like agriculture or the fisheries and the SMEs, which they call the backbone of the economy, right? But if you look at the language, that's why I brought the departments of economics, because they train a lot of people, right, to become economists, to become teachers, to become policy makers. This budget also shows this very one way of one-track mindedness in the budget. Right? So, and if you want to really, and they are talking about green finance, I think Sri Lanka is a late bloomer, but the whole world knows the private sector is not going to invest in green technology. This is what's happening in the US or Europe. That there's a huge cry for the governments to step in, that they are not doing it. Unbelievable. Really? What are you going to do with this? Are you really going to cater them to the PPPs, the private-public partnerships? Wouldn't the government want to start somewhere, some targeted investments? So I'll stay for the Q&A. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Malati. I think we have a couple of thoughts I think through in terms of the alternative side of the economic policy that are being proposed to the budget and the country therein. So our final panelist for the evening is none other than Professor Priyanka Singh. Professor Priyanka Singh is Senior Lecturer at the Department of Economics, University of Colombo. He has obtained his first degree in economics also from the University of Colombo and pursued his higher studies at Kyushu University, Japan. Prior to joining the university, he worked as a research officer at Institute of Policy Studies of Sri Lanka, and he offers quantitative courses to both undergraduate and postgraduate degree programs, and his area of research interests are labor market, poverty, development economics, and international trade. Moreover, he often engages with electronic and printed media in debating socio-economic issues of the country, and we'll be focusing on the macroeconomic side of things for this panel discussion. So we'll do it.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. And I think since three speakers already discussed a lot, I have anything to add. And when you say macro perspective, actually that means you do not need to be specific on anything. You can basically throw out some general stuff. Okay, to begin with, budget 2025, I think is significant due to 4 reasons. First, I think it is the first ever budget of a leftist-oriented political party having a majority in parliament. So they talk about a lot about IMF, lot about capitalist class, lot about state intervention, so on and so forth. So people were waited. People wanted to see how they basically discovered an alternative path. Second, the budget was presented after a presidential and parliamentary election where political parties gave numerous promises. So people wanted to see some of those promises delivered, whether they can deliver. Third, as I think many, our speakers highlighted, we all know the countries under IMF program, so government, generally has a need to comply with key parameters. Then we can see that how the government has done too, I think has discussed meeting the revenue target, meeting the primary surplus deficit, but reaching the expenditure in terms of total expenditure to total expenditure as a percentage of GDP. IMF basically indicated 20.2, but government has gone to 21.8. Again, when it comes to budget deficit, IMF wanted to have 5.2, but in that government ended up with 6.7. But other ones, we can see that the government largely complied with the IMF. The third, I think, the fourth, so finally, the budget was presented at a time when global uncertainties alarmingly rose to a new level. How did the newly elected government meet public expectation and address existing emerging challenges? So, government simply disregarded the global uncertainties as far as I can see. Okay, shall we first look at some of the key features in the budget? First thing, we can see at least three principles on which the budget is basically based. First one, dealing from their traditional approach or the Marxist orientation, they have basically mentioned that they believe in demand, supply, and prices and competitive markets. That indicates, as our representative from the Chamber of Commerce mentioned, continuity of the previous policy regime. The second, basically, I think that is a very good element where the government has mentioned that government must regulate and monitor market through regulatory bodies. I think this is a plus point as far as I can see. Reason is that we should see that the markets, due to numerous failures in developing country context, often exploit people and uncompetitive practices, put small producers at disadvantage. If government can certainly monitor and regulate the market mechanism, I think that is a plus point. The third principle is that basically government is aiming at sharing the development benefits with those who are not able to actively engage in the development process. I think this is what we call the sharing development benefits. While saying that the government is basically planning at sharing the benefits and mentioning that nearly 47% of the public, 47% of the output basically shared by 20% of the rich. Government abolished the property tax or the wealth tax. Okay, government abolishing the wealth tax or the property tax, government has put the burden on the other ordinary taxpayers through various indirect taxes. Okay, while saying that government is aiming at sharing the development benefits, taking certain policy decisions or the policy stance, basically it is against or which is contrary to the such policy stance. When it comes to the macro economy, basically government has come up with the medium-term macro policy framework, highlighting that government is aiming at maintaining a 5% growth and maintaining a low interest rates and inflation, while maintaining a smaller gap in the balance of payment and reducing the fluctuations in exchange rate, so on and so forth. But to what extent the government can maintain this macro framework depend on whether the government can meet the revenue target. Because when it comes to the expenditure side, government has gone an extra mile, so gone up to 21.6 or 21.8. And when it comes to taxes, government depends largely on vehicle importation taxes. I think import taxes, as mentioned, nearly 650 billion. So it is a sizable, and not just alone the vehicle, okay, altogether from the tariffs. Basically, when it comes to vehicle importation, around 300 to 350. But as far as we can see now, this is March. We are getting into March. It's highly, doubtful that government can reach this particular target. So the possibility is high. Then government miss the revenue target. Thereby, there is no room for government to get into new taxes. So whatever the government do, government will cut down the capital expenditure. So the possibility is high from that. And if government want to continue with the capital expenditure, then government will need to borrow, so that could have an impact on various key macroeconomic variables. So thereby, basically, having a negative impact on the macro environment. So macroeconomic stability is very important in order to enhance investments. But again, we must say that the current tax policy is not pro-growth. While agreeing with the government that government must meet the revenue targets set by the IMF program, government should have come with, should have come with the alternative tax policy which is conducive to economic growth and development. With the current tax policy, I don't think that government can raise the required investments. In this context, government must raise it from the private sector, because government capital expenditure is just 4% of the 4% of GDP. So you need the local and foreign direct investments and local investments. But I don't see that we have created enough, or we have created conducive environment for that. Even though government has taken steps in minimizing corruptions and bribes and other misuse of public funds, and articulating that the investor can go and meet directly the UI and put up projects. But I don't think that such policies alone can create a dynamic environment where that Sri Lanka can basically get the required investments. And broadly speaking, we can see two approaches in the budget. We call the macro approach and the micro approach. And the macro approach, government has jumped into the open and free market economic model, though they have criticized this starting from 1968. Finally, the leftist government basically, they have basically accepted the free open market economy, and accordingly they have introduced various policies in order to enhance economic growth. So the macro picture or the macro approach is almost aligned with the previous governments. Whatever their arguments, whatever the various icing that they try to place on, their policies are very much aligned with the policies of the previous government when it comes to the macro approach. Okay, in terms of how they plan to promote investment, how they plan to promote industrialization, how they plan to promote or basically restructure the public sector. Apparently, they mention about the export-oriented industrialization, but they never mention about the import substitution industrialization. this is a very, very unfortunate because when they went to court against the economic transformation bill, highlighting that they are against the bill because the country cannot go for import industrialization if this particular bill is allowed or passed. But when it comes to their chance or their turn, they simply forgot this particular industrialization strategy. They talk about the production-based economy, so on and so forth. Then when it comes to micro approach, they again has followed the traditional path. Even if you take the budget from 2012 onwards, you can clearly see when the macro front go with the neoclassical or neoliberal or mainstream economics with reforms and other programs, there are some number of people who are left out, and those left out are look after to various micro programs such as assessment, such as giving various free subsidies and free fertilizer and so on and so forth. So exactly that is what this government has also followed. So in that case, this budget does not contain any radical reforms that is required, very much required, to basically transform this economy and make this a competitive economy. They have implemented some of the reforms which were highlighted or which were laid out in the economic transformation bill. The single window, concept of single window, allowing private sector to come up with, set up free trade zones, so on and so forth. All were there in the economic transformation bill under the Invest Sri Lanka, Zone Sri Lanka, Enterprise Sri Lanka, and other institutional mechanisms. So they just have implemented very, some selected, topics. This is something like this is a post-marriage. You are going to implement policy that you do not believe in. Don't expect the results as we basically can be expected in an environment where the policies are carried out by those believers of the free market. So finally, we don't have basically a medium-term economic plan behind this budget. Leftist parties are very much good at coming up with the 5-year plan, 10-year plan. Economic planning is a key core component of their policy, package. But this budget is presented without a development plan. So I think in such a context, we will continue as it is, and we cannot expect any radical change into the existing economic structure. Without transforming this economy into a productive, highly productive one, we cannot expect to promote productivity, promote female labor force participation, or promote investment. Without those three drivers of the economy, I don't think that we can have a 5% growth on a sustainable manner. So with that, I will stop here. Thank you.
Alright, so now we're coming to the participant round of sorts of the panel discussion, just to make sure that all of you are well awake. And let's get a good evening from you. And another good evening, please, from the middle and both sides. Good evening. Last time, come on. Good evening. Good evening. Thank you. Alright, so this is how the Q&A will go. So how I have structured this is to make it into a funnel. So we'll first look into the broad dimensions of the budget, and then we'll go into the more specifics of the budget, where you, one of the audience, can come in and ask any questions that you may have of the budget. To start things off, I'll be directing my question to President Singh and also Dr. Amali. So the first question I have is, given that we are unfortunately tied with the IMF, given defaulting about 2 years ago, what would you think, President Singh, is needed to achieve the 2.3% primary surplus with the given revenue targets and the expenditure that we have?
I think basically this is how even the previous government did when it comes to meeting primary surplus of the previous target. I think very simple formula adopted by the treasury people is that they cut the capital expenditure whenever there is a revenue shortfall. I think the same practice we can expect because now budget is passed and it will be implemented from the April. So you have nearly 8 months. Within the 8 months, government certainly know that government institutions are not in a position to carry out the capital expenditure projects. So I think if the public expenditure has come down to 4%, if it is further, if it is reduced further, I think it will have a negative impact to the economy in terms of basically promoting economic growth in the medium term. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor. So just to kind of tie that in with my next question, there was a lot of sentiment about how there's a revenue expenditure mismatch and whether the NPP or the government in power actually met their election promises. So with that in mind, I want to get my next question, Dr. Amali. Do you think that the present government actually met the expectations of the voter base and voted their way with their election promises?
So I don't know because I haven't spoken to people. But I think the wages increase, somewhat social security, the expenses expansion, and some new items being included. So there must be that's my response, right? Must be at least some kind of satisfaction that their needs will increase because for the public sector workers, it's after a long time that their basic income basics are going to increase. And the same goes for the private sector, whether the private sector employees, whether the private sector is going to provide that salary increase or not, I don't know. And I think the same thing was spoken about the tea garden workers, that there are long overdue demand for an increase of 1,700 daily wage. But the company has been, I think, resisting for a long time. And the access to my expansion also, I think there's a lot of precursors on the enumeration, and I saw that in the budget speech they have discussed how that these mistakes in enumeration with the address and the cash transfers have been increased. But whether these are adequate, because we are talking about a society that has lived through, as I said, long years of austerity and COVID pandemic and the economic crisis, and the burden of all these crises have been exclusively placed on the low-wage working people. So whether the budget was successful in addressing the needs, I don't know. I don't think so.
Thank you, Dr. Amali. So, given that there is that negative sentiment with the budget as well, my next question will be directed towards the sort of the pressure on the consumers, which is more the tax question and also the increases side of things. With the tax bracket reduced, but also with the withholding tax increase, do you think that the IR in the department can actually manage the kind of sophisticated ways in which taxes evolve in the budget, and what are your thoughts on the pressure that is there on the consumer there?
Pressure on the consumers was something that is not gone. It was there since January of 2024, and I think standard implemented that has resulted in the deflation of sorts because there is no demand in the economy anymore. But where people's liquidity is concerned, by and large, you need to have money to spend, right? And personally, I believe that this increase or doubling the withholding tax from 5 to 10% because some people, that's all they have. Without a cap, everybody, of course, everyone will end up suffering a double hit on the withholding tax on interest, and that would essentially mean they have less money to spend, and they need to wait long enough till the Inland Revenue actually gives the refund back. So So why introduce further tax, or rather why increase the tax when you know you probably don't have the mechanism to refund, and you know for sure that there's going to be a lot of people queuing out at your door asking for refund. So ideally, if refund process is automated and you get it instantly, or even if the procedure they currently have for senior citizens, where they're saying that if you are saying your income is less than 1.8, if you get that to the entire population, I'm sure that 20 children with bank accounts, 20 senior citizens with accounts who don't have to really pay, even normal citizens, just senior citizens. So, and that liquidity I don't think is the right thing to do, given that we have that on almost everything, and that is an indiscriminate indirect tax. It hits all of us equally. So the idea should have been not to, do something that will first that will give us liquidity. And
Just to add on to what Sanjay now responded to my other question, which I want to use that the capital gains tax is also increased at this point, and there is a likelihood that demand pick up, as you said, but there's also counterintuitive possibility that they can't due to the tax. What do you think is the balancing act there for the producer to meet the possible demand if there is, and also what would supply look like for this year?
So capital gains, by and large, just to give some perspective, in theory, capital gains is only going to be if I am selling an unlisted share that I have, because the listed shares are exempt from capital gains, or if I am going to sell one of my land or building. So yes, it is a tax on somebody who has capital, so to speak, but it's a one-off tax. So I don't know how much of the shifting of the tax burden that will cause, because people could just hang on to it without selling it. And nowadays all I see is people are like to sell it because that it was not, because then it will be 10%. Really, I don't know if that's the step in the right direction, but I suppose time will tell. Sanjay, you can elaborate.
First and foremost, I think on CCPI tax inflation, it's mainly supply side. You have your reductions in your utilities compared to a higher index, of course. Hence why you see a deflation. Your utility costs have come down comparatively again. Fuel costs have come down comparatively, although still high. And the central bank would more or less look at the demand side. But of course, on the disposable income, like you said, clearly disposable income is an issue for all people. But what's interesting is the president made this remark at a conference recently. Now, we have about 1.9 trillion rupees from the Indian Revenue Department. Out of that, 70% of most of that income comes from about 621 files. What the private sector says is, most of them, is that the taxpayers suffer a lot, and that's an issue. Of course, there are folks who evade taxes. That's part of administration. How do you capture them? How do you make sure? Because it's quite unfair for a few folks to be paying taxes, while there are a lot of folks out there who are not and who should be paying. Now, if you look at paying, it was increased from the tax-free threshold was increased from 100,000 to 150,000 rupees per month. Now, the loss that I saw in the budget estimates was about 41 billion rupees. From 197 billion, it has come down to about 150 billion, 156 billion, something like that. Now, the government, from how they are going to manage that, is going to look at making imports, as was discussed, roughly about 0.8 or 1% of GDP they are expecting, close to about 300 billion. But how that would work out is going to be very interesting. Can they achieve this or not? I think it's important to look at the tax administration. So that's pretty good. There are a lot of folks out there who are not paying and should be in the tax there. Because it's very unfortunate to have your taxes on goods and services that don't have captured those who are not students. And that was media discussion.
Thank you, Sanjay. Just because I was saying about that.
I think we also, I think I totally agree with Sanjay in terms of improving the tax administration and capturing those who are evading tax. Because if you look at the Sri Lankan economy, the household income and expenditure survey data, you see that in Sri Lanka, the population has been segregated to an ultra-rich 20% and whose income has, whose wealth has exponentially increased over the last 20 years compared to the last 50% of the income groups, right? The lower 50% of the income groups whose income has actually either stagnated or declined. So the bet on these people who have suffered for decades is really unfair. I mean, when the VAT went to 18% and it's 15%, though there has been some exemptions or some cash grants, still it's a very indiscriminate policy. It doesn't really look at who can really afford and who cannot. And most of the VAT, because it's on the consumption side, a lot of women are made to bear this cost of this VAT, government revenue burden, right? Because a lot of women women are providers of food, right? They provide, they put the social, the caring process, and most of the women, I think we know that in Sri Lanka they are underrepresented in the labor force, meaning they are working in the informal sector, so are not really remunerated. And again, subscribing to the lower wage levels. And when you are trying to extract bulk of your revenue from those people, it's going to deteriorate the income inequality, which is really built into the economy. Thank you, Dr.
One point. First one is, I think, that is why this wealth tax or the property tax is imposed. Now, government always mentions that there are people who, accumulated wealth through various legal means. At the same time, is that there are people who evade taxes. So if you implement wealth taxes, you can at least partly can capture that. But this government, being a workers' political party, working class political party, but granted a huge concession to the capitalist class in terms of abolishing the wealth tax. Government should not have done that, I think. And again, posing a huge tax on the vehicle imports. The second thing is, I think we often say that, tax-paying people, but we need to keep that in mind. Almost all the people are paying taxes. Maybe some may pay direct, the other certainly indirect. So when we refer, we have to acknowledge that all are paying taxes. So very small to be correct extent.
Just to piggyback on the tax aspect that you said that needs to be done now, would you look at the import tax on vehicles as a form of wealth tax given how high it is, or do you think it's just an attempt at discouraging vehicle imports? What are your thoughts on that?
I think there are a number of issues in setting the taxes on vehicles. One thing is that whether that alarmingly increased imports, thereby having a negative impact on the external sector. That is a concern certainly. And on the other hand, vehicles are priced at a certain level, and against that, various financial facilities have been given. Now, if the vehicle prices come down, it is like a price decline, something similar to that. So, I am sure that the first reason was, I think, was a concern for policymakers, that is to make sure that normal demand is not created, thereby having a negative impact on the external sector. I think already some ministers hinted that they may consider of reducing taxes. That will certainly create an adverse selection in the moral hazard situation in the market. Now people simply wait now, expecting taxes to come down, so government certainly that will not meet the revenue target, thereby pushing imposing government to reduce the taxes. That certainly will happen. Thank you.
Thank you. If there are no add-ons, we can maybe move into the audience. If you have any questions, please ask the panelists. Also, just keep it respectful so that the parties can be very emotional, so just keep things very respectful. Yeah? And secondly, keep it concise so that it's easy to follow for the panelists and also for me to figure out what you're trying to say. That being said, are there any questions for the panelists? Maybe from the students, from the side? Yes.
Report of 2024 June, the latest report we have, and that in that report, there are some expectation for the budget 2025 indicated the domestic borrowing. That amount is, as far as remember, 1.2 trillion or 1,200 billion. Now, this budget is expected to increase up to 2.1 million. Nearly 900 million is going to increase over the expectation of IMF. So now my question is, because government budget is the main fiscal policy provide a basic fiscal policy direction of the nation. So given that borrowing affected the monetary policy.
Keep it short. Will the borrowing that we are providing, will it affect monetary policies, which is the question, so you
I could have answered this, I think, if not you mentioned about that the monetary policy goes. So because of that, I cannot answer. Sorry.
Any other panelists?
Just to say that earlier, before the central bank Act came into place, there was always fiscal forbearance on monetary policy. The central bank Act gave independence to the central bank. Some agree, some disagree with it. There is, if you look at borrowings, I think that's a question that you also are looking at. You have domestic borrowings and foreign borrowings. Right now, you see, as of in September 2024, the quarterly debt report is out. Quarterly debt will be published by the Ministry of Finance. You see that the domestic borrowings have actually gone up because you need financing for the budget. And as I mentioned, the budget has allocated about 2.95 trillion rupees out of your 5.88 trillion expenditure. Compared to 2024, that interest cost was at about 2.05 trillion rupees. So clearly it has gone up. Yet we see. So we see how it goes, but that's the context I want to set, want to explain, but let me not go into the cause and impacts. Okay.
Any other questions for the panelists? So there's one question that I'll say to your right.
basically what it does is currently there is an exemption. And the exemption, just a quote from the law, is also on profits and gains. There is profits and gains from somebody, a person who provides service in outside Sri Lanka to a person to be utilized or consumed outside Sri Lanka. So the person has to actually use your service for the benefit outside of the country and you get the money, foreign currency goes back. So that is the verbatim from the law. And yes, so if you are a lawyer and you are doing business or this particular service fee will come under your business income. So business income you are entitled to deduct any expenses.
What about people who I remember
Yes, so that will be the sector that is actually going to be heavily impacted by this. If you, as an individual, if you are the one who is earning the income, yes. But if you have a company that is, if it isn't who has the contract with the foreign party, if you, if, as an individual, if you are a freelance, say software engineer for some entity in another part of the world, and you're getting the money, then you are exempt. Currently, maybe if you are employed by an IT giant, then they are exempt, not you. Whatever you get is it goes through the act.
So, freelance IT we have to pay tax now. And can we deduct expenses?
Yes, he has to first work out the profit and then apply the 15% on that. And now it's not 15, it goes through the progressive. So you have the 1.8 million tax free, the first million at 6% and the balance at 15. So flat 15 is for companies.
So you have to add this to the local income? Or
Yes.
separate?
No, you have to add to your local income because the progressive table is on your taxable income, not only on your business income.
So maximum for foreign income is
Is
15.
15, yes.
But based on the program.
Yes.
So if we only earning on that, this is the
Yeah. So,
exemption.
yes.
Like,
So there is no exemption, you get the concessionary rate.
Thank you, Sarah. I want to take about 2 more questions from the audience. I think I have about 5 minutes left. Then that's okay. Any questions? Yes, Ms.
My question is to, follow up to what Hassan asked. How does this impact the economy? Because service, I understand that there's a problem with taxes, and there's a global code that we are trying to move into minimum taxes. But service exporters, that is companies or individuals, it's quite easy to shift because the service not really located in one place. How would this affect first the company and something already has some idea of this and losing a Sarah putting it from how it understand. I have small questions for answer. How because when 2017 when came this exception was revoked, right? So was it the same words that were used, was it the gains and income, or was it different language?
So the income tax is charged on your profits. Income is not, if you are running a business, you pay a tax on your profits, not on your top line. Employment, where tax on the gross remuneration. So when the exemption was, I wouldn't say removed, when the new law came, it wasn't there for a good maybe a year and a half, and then it was brought back, and I suppose if there was an analysis done as to how the forex flows were during that period, we will know what the impact will be now, because my personal opinion is that unlike export of goods where you actually employ methods of production, in supply of services it's so much easier for you to offshore contracts. So this has been, I suppose, a risk that that's been taken. You can easily move your KPO operations to a country like Singapore, where they don't tax the offshore income or another maybe tax-friendly jurisdiction, and still give benefit. Leaving to the economics to answer the economic benefit.
Maybe just to say I think Sarah covered everything, but on the services exports, as I said, it's about 3.6 billion. Out of that, about 848 million was reported from ITPO. But of course, there are questions that one can ask. It's measured through this ITRS system, as you know. It could be undervalued. But as I think Sarah said, it's quite easy to move and shift because you don't have physical systems that you need to shift. It's the service sector, that's the thing. So it's easier to shift. Yet to be seen how that could impact the economy. Maybe the chamber is yet to have discussions on this because the bill was just released very recently. But I think there could be implications because of this potential moving forward.
You missed just as a follow-up. When it was removed at the time, I was still in taxes or all this that. I remember that panel comprised of some very famous panelists at the budget seminar, and they said when the export of goods is paying, why can't service pay? But goods gets enhanced capital allowances, enhanced depreciation allowances, and so on and so forth, because they employ capex, whereas service is only people.
Thank you. Just the final question that we have from a participant that was given. The Google form, a question that came up was there are a lot of welfare activities that was also getting relation from this, but also we saw quantitatively in the budget. Based on the historical view of welfare, they haven't been quite sustainable. So that being said, how sustainable do you think welfare schemes in this budget is? So perhaps Dr. Mali can answer this question. We can wrap up for today.
I think it's not the burden of, say, like the people really ensure, because as I said, everybody is a working person, whether it's the unwaged women who are running the households, or whether it's a top private company CEO or a big company. I think, and because we are talking about welfare at a particular juncture of our economy also. We had the pandemic, we have had the economic crisis, and the crisis management, the stabilization, directly affected the lowest income groups of our country. And there is also, I don't know whether we can talk about Sri Lankan crisis as a short-term development, because this has been happening depending on where you are, where you are a farmer, to being in a very long-term development. But the economic, the default and the crisis that ensued, you can say it's a short-term development, right? But the very stabilization policies and how these things affect is that there is long-term consequences on how the stabilization policies affect, particularly on women. Everybody talk about increasing women's participation in the labor force, but it has been really difficult. Right? The World Bank reports, report after report talks about how the private sector will employ more women if the labor laws are deregulated. If the benefits on women, like maternity leave, right, or the night care, night they don't want to provide living wages. So it's up to the government to provide some social cash transfers. In case of crisis, we saw during pandemic, various 5,000s were issued. Or there's a new year package coming up. So I mean, if you have living wages, we don't have to, I think, talk about public sector, public services are something. Social security is also there. But you don't really have to talk about this distress component of the population all the time if they are given proper wages and if they are employed.
Before I think answering the welfare expenditure related question, I think I'm very happy that Mr. Senanayake wrote out the very relevant and significant question. And I think audience must find a way out in arguing and debating the topic. It is very much relevant. Unfortunately, I cannot share my views, given the position that I held at Central Bank as the Monetary Policy Board member. And moving to the welfare expenditure, I think what we see in this budget, the government has getting into very long distance in spreading welfare expenditure into various underprivileged groups or vulnerable groups without setting some certain targets or certain ending dates. This is very dangerous. Now the Samurdhi benefits increased by threefold, but link that to the 3-year period where the beneficiaries will receive 3 years. During that period, certain graduation schemes will be launched out. Right now, all these are dismantled and just pumping money, basically public money, maintaining the state welfare economic model. Actually, this welfare economic model was the one that basically blown up in 2022, saying, suggesting that Sri Lanka is no longer able to maintain this particular welfare state model. I think Sri Lanka must take this seriously because if you continue now, Australia alone, 235 billion, how you can maintain this? I think this is a serious issue. Government salaries are increased without reforming the public sector to reduce the workforce to 8 lakhs, 7 lakhs. You are running very unproductive economy because certain welfare programs have created a situation where people do not work hard. So this should be reoriented, transformed, but unfortunately nothing has suggested in this budget in pushing the economy from low productive one to high productive one. So that is, I think, alarming concern. Years to come, I am sure that you will have more welfare schemes and that certainly will further expand the budget deficit, thereby having a serious implication on the macroeconomic environment in the economy. Thank you.
Minister, I think we've come to the end of the panel discussion and Q&A. Thank you very much to all our panelists for being with us this evening. I think the ending note for all of us is that no matter what happens, no matter what budget comes about, the takeaway should be that we need to add value to whatever we do and use our talents to the best of our capacity, ask the hard questions, obviously, and of course, be diversified and just embrace the youngness in all of us. That being said, I'd like to hand over the proceedings to Bart to wrap things up.
Thank you to our speakers, our moderators, and our participants. I think we've unpacked a lot, and I think there's a lot more to unpack, so let's keep the discussion going. To show our appreciation to our panelists. Alukya to present these programs. I would now like to invite the Secretary of the Economic Students Association, Lanka, to deliver the vote of thanks. Good evening, esteemed panelists, guests, members of the academic staff, and my fellow citizens. Under the microscope. So, we were searching where the country will move. Hope you all agree that we had a great session on 2025 budget. So, after 3 years, we have been able to conduct this annual budget discussion as an on-site session. So, on behalf of the Economic Students Association, it's a great pleasure for me to thank the individuals who made this event a reality. First of all, my heartfelt gratitude goes to our esteemed panelists, Professor Priyaprada Singha, Dr. Aman Vedagedara, Mr. Sanjay Aryavansa, Ms. Sarah After for their valuable contribution as panelists. Also, we would like to thank the moderator of the event, Shihara Ferdinando, for her job well. A special thank goes to the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, Senior Professor Santamanavadu, and the head of the Department of Economics, Professor Chandan Alokye, the Senior Treasurer of the SR, Mr. Umesh Moramudali, and the academic staff of the Department of Economics for their guidance and support throughout the event. We truly appreciate the participation of all the invitees here for their active participation and adding a color to the event. Also, we would like to thank the media partners through TV, Verana, and the Digital Media Club of the Faculty of Arts for their media coverage. Finally, my sincere gratitude goes to the President, Executive Committee, and the Media Unit of ESA and the organizing committee members for their commitment and support in making this event a success. Once again, we truly appreciate your presence here today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dhanji. I would like to make a kind request to our panelists, staff, and Expo of the Economic Students Association to say that for a quick